sinners, and saints. Dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alan After Dark.
Sinners and saints, you know, Alan After Dark has always been a place where we can escape, have fun, and talk about just the craziest, wackiest things that come to mind. But you also know that I do tackle serious topics from time to time because I want this podcast to be about everything, anything that is pertinent to life and living, especially as a gay man. I don't know if you all are ready to hear this episode, what we're going to talk about, but I feel like at this point in the world, this is necessary. I want to express my absolute frustration and anxiety to the rest of the world that's outside the United States. And I really hope that most of you know that we don't support the fascist behavior of our current federal and some state governments in this country. What I'm really worried about is that a lot of Americans are just choosing to bury their heads in the sand and pretend like what is clear as day is not what's really happening. And my frustration grows every day when I look at what our country is supposed to represent. We are supposed to be that guiding light. We are supposed to be that shining city on a hill. We are supposed to be about liberty and freedom and welcoming the entire world. But when you hear a story like André Jose Hernandez Romero's story, how can I just not talk about the anger and the anxiousness and the fear that a lot of us have in this country, that we could be seeing real life fascism evolve right before our very eyes? I don't know how anybody can try to pretend they don't understand André's story. You're talking about a gay man from Venezuela who was fleeing persecution from there because of his political views and his sexual orientation, who has lived in this country legally, and the fascists in our government claim that because he had certain tattoos that he was a gang member and that it justifies no due process, and deporting him to a fucking prison in El Salvador where he's probably being raped and beaten virtually every day. How is that right? How can any American just turn a blind eye to what's going on? I mean, that's just one case. We have the case of the legal resident in Maryland who they admit that they deported incorrectly. It was an error, but they refused to follow the judge's orders and bring him back, saying that they can't do anything now because he's in a different country. That is bullshit. And if Americans don't open their eyes and see what's going on, it is going to finally affect them as well. I always flash back to that old saying that came out of World War II, and I'm going to paraphrase it, and don't hold me to an absolute professor's level of knowledge here, but I remember hearing this old quote where a man says, "First they came for the socialist, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." And I'm telling you, all of you that are listening, that we are on that cusp in the United States. They will start snatching American citizens off the streets, and we will disappear. And on top of this, what's really bothering me, the people that are saying, "Oh, that's not going to happen," are the same ones that were telling us that we were being irrational when it come to Project 2025. And now we see it being implemented virtually in its entirety in this country. They're just not calling it that, but we all know what it is. Everything that they're doing are within those pages of that plan that was created by the so-called Heritage Foundation, which is nothing but a bunch of right-wing Nazis hell-bent on making this a single race country, eliminating every other color but what they deem as white. Go ahead and get pissed at me and turn off this podcast tonight if you want to, but I'm hoping that I can light a fire under enough people so that we finally can direct this passion in a way that we start helping the people that are really in need and opening people's eyes to the actual truth. I know that I'm going to sound like a fucking conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to beg your indulgence for just a few minutes, okay? So I want to start with asking a few questions, and I am probably going to take you down a potential conspiracy theory path. I want you to try to consider what I'm about to say as a real possibility. I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm not trying to convert you. I just want everyone to think about this and consider it as a very real possibility. The first question that comes to mind is very simple. Why? Why would they do this? Why would they want to do it? I think that it's a very simple answer to that question. They have an agenda, and that agenda is to further enrich the super rich and create an economic climate in which the poor, and if there is even a middle class left, would be forced to work at cheaper wages just to survive, just to appease these powerful oligarchs. It's the same ideology as is in Russia and other countries. Your next question might be, what evidence do you have to support such a theory? Well, it's very clear. They are already cutting funding to the Department of Education, if not eliminating it altogether. They've decreased funding for Veterans Affairs. They are cutting food support that was going to charities to help people that were hungry. They are cutting funding for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're looking at cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. All these programs help the poor and the middle class. So what's that going to do? It's going to make the poor even poorer, the middle class poorer. And what will it do to those that are elderly and in bad health? So it seems to me on the cruelest level of fascism that the people that are in control of our government see the poor and the elderly as problematic. And if you cut funding for programs that help them, it might hurry the process along to eliminate them. In other words, allow them to die. It then further weakens all the rest of us who will not be able to survive in an economic climate in which the oligarchs dictate wages, services, healthcare, everything. How do you survive in that type of economic environment? The answer is you have to survive in the way that they dictate. I'm talking about modern day slavery, and I don't think that's so out of the question. If you look at all these pieces coming together, using the argument that they're just trying to balance a budget, which in itself is ridiculous and stupid. Quite simply, we would not have deficits if they did not continue to cut taxes to the super rich and the elite. I've always challenged people who talk about taxes. I mean, I use it in ways that they really get angry. I'll say something like, so you don't think Madonna should pay as much in taxes as we do? And they really do get angry at that when you twist it to where you know that it's someone that they despise because they can't stand liberal artists and free-thinking artists and provocative artists. So it forces them to acknowledge that they really don't believe in these so-called tax cuts, but they've been conditioned to believe that if you tax the rich, they will punish us by taking away jobs, cutting their facilities, their businesses down to nothing. Well, that's bullshit too, because you check in these international companies, and I swear that they're paying plenty of taxes in China, in Vietnam, in Malaysia, in Europe, in South America, everywhere else in the world. they're paying their fair share of taxes. It's only in this country that they're getting away with it. And also, additional support for this argument is the treatment now of transgender people and gay people. They are pushing on many state levels and at the federal level, once again, this doctrine that a family that has a husband and a wife is the only one that is relevant to society. Everything else should be rejected. That is a way to justify demonizing the transgender community, the gay community, and imposing this false narrative that married heterosexual couples are the only ones that can raise a family. And I always argue, well, what about in families where a husband or wife dies? Is that a single parent then not providing an adequate upbringing to their children? Give me a fucking break. This is from people who have been married and divorced, cheated on their wives, got prostitutes and everybody else in the free world that they could get a hold of pregnant, and they're trying to lecture us about morality. That's because it's not really about morality. It's an agenda to eliminate anybody that they deem less than perfect. And that is straight out of the Nazi fascist playbook. And let's talk about DEI for a second. They claim that it's discriminating against white people, but DEI in schools guaranteed children with disabilities equal access to a full education through high school. So if you're eliminating that, you're trying your best to target those people that are deemed weak or less than perfect, and punishing those with disabilities, pushing them to the outside of our society, removing their ability to get education, reduces them to less and less and less. And the hope is, I really do think this is a possibility, that they really do want to eliminate anybody they deem not fit to live. They look at everybody in society that isn't rich as someone that is a parasite, that is a drain on our government and our society. I don't know how anybody could argue with me on that. You can just listen to them talk. You can see how they behave. Tell me that I'm wrong. The Supreme Court rulings overturning Roe v. Wade, women's health care rights, all these things, you put them all together and you do see a picture. Now, I hope that I am wrong. And you all can say that I'm wrong. But I'll just say this. Everything that I've predicted before has come true. I think that's why I have nightmares every night. I can't sleep a full night without having at least one nightmare. And this has been going on for a couple of months now. Literally every night I have a nightmare of some kind. And I just feel like it's because my mind and my conscience is so troubled by what I'm seeing every day, seeing it get worse. I mean, even the fucking tariffs that Orange Turd has implemented without hardly any objection from the Republican Party. To me, it's designed to make the poor and the elderly weaker, poorer, and probably die sooner than they normally would. Seriously. And we do want to believe that our country, especially the United States, could never fall into fascism. But take a look at the department called ICE, these so-called officers who are the ones out on the streets snatching these people and deporting them. They obviously believe in what they're doing, otherwise they would object. Now maybe they are doing it privately, trying to, within their own department, argue that what some of these actions have been unconstitutional. But if they are, it's not getting out. And I have to believe these members of ICE are no different than the members of Hitler's SS, who had no qualms about snatching up Jews off the streets, gypsies off the streets, gay people, anybody opposed to them. So that tells me that there are a lot more people in this country that believe in fascism that will ever publicly admit it. What they're doing, though, is they're still claiming that this isn't fascism. And they can convince, through Fox News and other organizations, that it's not. But if they get the evidence out and the documents out and the writings of Hitler and of fascists throughout history, they'll see that what they're doing is exactly like what they want. How do they possibly live with themselves, knowing that they remind most of us, of Nazis. I guess they're proud of that. But I have to remind them, Nazi Germany was destroyed, obliterated in World War II. So you don't have much evidence that fascism works. So what does this mean for us, those of us in the gay community, women, immigrants, especially immigrants of brown and black skin color? I fear the worst. I can hope for the best, and I can hope that we will have free and fair elections, and we can, through our own system, eliminate these monsters. But I also sincerely believe that they are trying to prevent us from having free elections in the next 2 to 4 years. They're going to try to come up with ways to prevent it from happening. I know everybody keeps saying, but why? But why? The people with these big egos, these inflated egos, it's like Assad in Syria. It's like Putin in Russia. They will rule over the ashes of their countries just to say that they're still the ruler. They don't care if their whole countries are in shambles as long as they're still the leader. And what's happening in this country is no different than that. Except for that, it seems like most of us are just standing by and allowing it to happen. Fuck. I just want us to have someone rise up as our leader. You know, Cory Booker, the senator who filibustered for 25 plus hours on the Senate floor, that was something. That was impressive. It showed leadership. But I don't know why Democrats are not confronting Trump every damn time he says something stupid or says something that's a lie. They should be in his face, calling him a liar, demanding evidence that what he says is true, and show him to be a liar. And as far as Elon Musk, allowing that scumbag piece of shit trash do what he's doing, which is nothing but lining his own pockets. All these claims of cutting waste, he has not shown one piece of evidence that proves any waste has been cut. He is no different than any other oligarch who is determined to benefit himself over the American people. Could you imagine if President Obama, President Biden had behaved the way these fucks are behaving? They'd be calling for their impeachment. They were over President Biden's son, Hunter, who never was in government. And they tried to say that that fucking laptop was at the same level of the orange turd having classified documents stored in a bathroom in Florida. They're okay with him meeting in his golf course in Florida with Saudi Arabian royalty to talk about a personal business project, about a golf tournament. I mean, seriously, that's what he's supposed to be doing? Really? When he could have been meeting the 4 soldiers who were killed in Lithuania? Can you imagine that? If Obama had said, I'm going to go golfing instead of meeting the plane that was bringing back our dead soldiers, they would have been preparing a cross to crucify him on. They would be wanting him lynched. I mean, they wanted him lynched anyway. So you already have the double standards, the hypocrisy, and you have an agenda in place. And I honestly do believe that that agenda means sacrificing the elderly and the poor to benefit the super rich. I know this is a very cynical and dark episode, and I want to say I'm sorry because I know a lot of you do tune in to Alan After Dark for the craziness and the sexuality and the funny stories, but sometimes we do have to speak out. And I do have some hope. Last weekend, there were huge protests across the country. I just wish that we weren't having to do those protests. I wish people had come out and voted when it mattered, and we wouldn't be in this fucking mess now. We wouldn't. It just feels like everything is going to have to burn down and be rebuilt before we can ever be the United States, the real United States again. Now, Having said all that, let's go out there and suck some dick, get drunk, get fucked, and have a fucking party like it's 1999. Damn, the time just flew by, didn't it? I'm so glad you stayed and listened to the entire episode. I am sweating like a Baptist in church, I gotta tell you. Remember, despite all these dark times that we're going through right now, always take life by the balls and be real. We'll see you soon.